Hello, I'm Mark Pruitt, the owner of the CB&Q in Wyoming. Today is October 3rd, 2020. This is construction update number 11. I didn't get a whole lot done this month because I had a friend who had a medical emergency very early in September, so I spent a couple of weeks back east to help him out. He's on the mend, and so I'm back in Wyoming and once again working on the layout. So let's take a look at what I did get done. Just before I left to go back east, I cut some cork sheets to size and glued them to the Casper yard benchwork where the reefer icing platform and tracks will go, along with another track that leads to a few more industries at the far end of the yard. All those boxes and whatnot you see in the distance were put on the cork to weight it down until the glue dried. On the 19th, after I returned home 2.5 weeks later, I removed all the stuff to reveal the cork sheets. I'm sure the glue was dry by that time. Then it was time to get back to the CNW track above Casper. I still had to build the benchwork on the wall above the far end of the yard. Because this area was complex, I drew out a detailed benchwork plan in CAD Rail. I didn't want to wing it here, which is what I tend to do with freestanding benchwork. By the 22nd, I was ready to start building the benchwork. First, I moved all the crap out of the way so I had room to work. The logical place to start was the corner where the CNW benchwork I installed above Casper back in August ended. Like that benchwork, since the back stringer would be attached to the wall, I needed to pre-install joist cleats on the stringer. Here that's complete and the stringer is permanently mounted to the wall. The next step was to temporarily mount the stringer for the Hudson grid. You'll note that part of it's hanging in the air, not attached to a wall. The far end is attached to a cleat on the other stringer. You can see that the near end doesn't reach the near end of the wall. Part of the test fit was to measure for the piece that would extend to the near corner. The next day I added the extension piece and attached joist cleats along the entire length. Then this stringer too was permanently attached to the wall. Then it was time to build out from the wall into the final configuration. I again started at the end of the already installed benchwork and worked my way around. Here we see how the benchwork angles for the corner curve and onto a very small straight section. That straight section is all of 7 inches wide, wall to front edge, and about 15 inches long. On the 24th, I was able to start on the Hudson bench itself. This picture looks a little bit odd because the bench actually tapers out from the wall from the near end, where it's only about 8 inches wide, to 23 inches wide at the far joist, the third one back. The photo almost makes the bench seem to be of uniform width, doesn't it? At this point, I was out of benchwork material, so the next morning I went to Menards and picked up another 4x8 sheet of 3/4 inch oak plywood. Once home, I cut it into 3-inch strips and I was back to working on the benchwork in the afternoon. By evening, the Hudson bench was complete. You can see the taper a little bit better in this shot. After a few days off to work on the still unfinished part of the basement on the other side of the stairs, I came back to the layout. It was time to install the backdrop for the new sections, so I unrolled everything I had from the prior layout in New Jersey onto the floor to take inventory. The shorter backdrop roll, on the left, is 24 feet long, and the one on the right is well over 30 feet. I selected the 24-foot backdrop to go onto the CNW over Hudson. On October 1st, I began extending the CNW backdrop around through Hudson. In this shot, I've attached the 1x2 backdrop mounts. If you look closely, you can see that while I was at it, I went ahead and added the upper backdrop mounts for the lower level directly under the CNW benchwork. The old backdrop was 14 inches tall, so I cut it to the correct height of 10 inches before installing it. Sorry, I didn't take a photo of that. By yesterday about noon, the backdrop was mounted, attached to the existing one on the right, and the seam filled and sanded smooth. In the afternoon it was painted, giving us what you see here. About 8 feet of the backdrop is still rolled up in the far left of this picture. It will be unrolled along the wall out of frame to the left when the benchwork is extended on towards lander. With all the preliminary work done, last night I began working out final track locations into Hudson. Today or tomorrow I'll cut the sub-road bed sections where I've marked them and attach them to the benchwork and to each other. Then I'll be ready to lay track. And that brings us to the end of another month. As I said, this was a somewhat short update. During October, I'll get track laid into Hudson and wired. Then I'll either start on scenery for parts of the C&W over Casper, or maybe I'll lay some of the industry tracks, including the icing platform tracks, in Casper. Then again, I've been itching to start building the icing platform itself, so I may forego the scenery and industry tracks and instead spend most of the month on the platform. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and I'll see you next month.